He didn't wear a crown, but without him the Tudors might never have ruled England. On the 29th of July 1504, Thomas Stanley, 1st Earl of Derby, died at his manor in Lancashire. You might not hear his name often, but his actions, especially in 1485, helped change the course of English history. He was stepfather to Henry Tudor, he was a husband to Lady Margaret Beaufort, and he was the man whose forces tipped the balance at the Battle of Bosworth field. Some even say that he picked up Richard III's fallen crown and placed it on Henry's head. But was Stanley truly loyal, or just a master of playing both sides? I'm Claire Ridgway, author and historian, and in today's On This Day in Tudor History, we're delving into the life of one of the most quietly powerful men of the 15th century, and the role he played in founding the Tudor dynasty. Thomas Stanley was born around 1433, the eldest son of Thomas Stanley, 1st Baron Stanley, and Joan Gausel. By 1454 he was already in royal service, acting as one of King Henry VI's squires. In the late 1450s, Stanley married his first wife, Eleanor Neville, daughter of Richard Neville, Earl of Salisbury, and sister to the infamous Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick, better known as the Kingmaker. Together, Thomas and Eleanor had 11 children, including George Stanley, 9th Baron Strange, Edward Stanley, 1st Baron Monteagle, and James Stanley, who went on to become Bishop of Ely. When his father died in 1459, Thomas inherited the titles of Baron Stanley and King of Man, yes, the Isle of Man, as well as extensive lands and powerful offices in Lancashire and Cheshire. After Eleanor's death in 1472, Stanley made a politically and dynastically significant marriage to Lady Margaret Beaufort, mother of Henry Tudor, who would one day become King Henry VII. That marriage made Thomas Stanley the stepfather of the future king and put him in a fascinating position during the power struggles of the late 15th century. Stanley remained loyal to the Yorkist cause for a time. In 1475 he led men in Edward IV's French campaign, 40 lances and 300 archers, and in 1482 he served in Scotland, helping to capture Berwick-upon-Tweed. And interestingly, in 1483, when Richard III was crowned, Stanley bore the Great Mace, a symbol of royal authority, at the coronation ceremony. Yet, just 2 years later, at the Battle of Bosworth field, it was Stanley and his brother Sir William Stanley whose intervention helped Henry Tudor defeat Richard III. Now, some accounts say it was Thomas Stanley who picked up Richard's fallen crown and placed it on Henry's head right there on the battlefield. That makes for a great story, although it's more likely that it was William Stanley who performed that symbolic act. Regardless, Thomas Stanley's loyalty, or at least his final choice, was handsomely rewarded. In October 1485, just weeks after Bosworth, where the Stanleys had sided with Henry Tudor at the last moment, Henry VII created him Earl of Derby. And Stanley remained close to the king in the years that followed. In 1486, Henry appointed him Lord High Constable of England and High Steward of the Duchy of Lancaster. When Prince Arthur, Henry and Elizabeth of York's eldest son, was born, Stanley stood as his godfather. But his family ties remained complicated. In 1495, his brother Sir William Stanley was executed for treason after being implicated in supporting pretender Perkin Warbeck. That same year, Thomas Stanley and Margaret Beaufort played host to King Henry VII during his visit to their homes at Latham and Knowsley. In 1499, Margaret Beaufort moved to Collyweston, where she set up her own household and even took a vow of chastity, a decision that effectively ended their marriage in practice, though the two remained connected. Stanley still visited her from time to time. Thomas Stanley died at Latham on this day in 1504, and he was buried at Burscough Priory. Thomas Stanley is one of those figures who stands in the shadows of the big Tudor names, yet his decisions, especially at Bosworth, changed the course of English history. Without his support, Henry Tudor may never have become king. Thank you for joining me, and if you enjoyed today's look at a lesser known Tudor figure, do give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to hit that bell so you never miss an on this day moment in Tudor history. See you next time. Bye bye.